Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd. We're so glad you could join us for another hour of good gardening, answering your gardening questions. If you've got a garden issue, you can phone in your questions to 402-472-1212 if you live in Lincoln. Our toll-free number is 1-800-676-5446. We'd also be happy to take your emailed pictures and questions for a future show. That email address is byf@unl.edu, and don't forget to tell us where you live. Please give us as much detail about your question as you can, otherwise we can't give you a good answer. During the rest of the week, you can follow Backyard Farmer on all that good social media stuff, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Pinterest. So Jody, you for once got to bring something beautiful.
Yes, I brought two things. I brought Beastie and Beauty. So we'll talk about the Beastie first. I brought red-headed blister beetles, and I've had a couple calls about these guys. So the beetles have kind of a weird neck, I would say. Their head is actually wider than their neck, or prothorax. But they are voracious feeders of many different plants, broccoli, cauliflower, whatnot, and also hostas and a lot of ornamentals. So they can be a problem, and they will all come in, a horde of them, overnight and destroy like your, planter gardens. So when you see them, you want to pick them off, but you want to wear gloves. They're called blister beetles for a reason. They've got a toxin that when it touches human skin, it can cause blisters. So we definitely don't want our dogs or our pets, chickens or horses to eat any of these. And then I have Beauty. So this is on butterfly milkweed. We have some monarch caterpillars. And a lot of people have been asking where the butterflies are, so they're coming. And if you want to see more other butterflies, there's a lot of swallowtail caterpillars on dill and parsley, as well as cabbage whites flying around. So get outside and check out the butterflies, because there are many.
Perfect, thanks Jody. All right, for the guy who, doesn't do weeds, Bill, apparently you've changed your modus operandi.
These are everywhere right now, and so I thought this would be a good sample to have. And so I actually have 4 different weeds that you could easily confuse. They're all forbs, and they're similar in that they're easy to control for the most part. You can control them with a lot of the combination products, and they're usually growing in thin lawns and gravel areas and compact soil with the vegetation is thin. So the first one here is this is ground spurge. And you'll notice this one because it has closer leaves relative to its kind of a cousin here. This is spotted spurge, which has little spots on the leaf. One of the things you'll notice about a spurge is when you break them off from their stem, you'll see a white milky sap coming out, and so the spurges are surging. That's one way you can remember it. And so this is just one of the weeds we might see. Another one that looks kind of similar to that is our purslane. Again, another summer annual. Just like all these are summer annuals, it means they complete their life cycle in 1 year and they start to regrow. This one has a much more fleshy stem, fleshy leaves, and so that's your purslane. And if you break this off, you don't get that white milky sap coming out of it. And then the last one, it looks kind of similar, is puncture vine, and this is one that you'll discover when it goes into your foot or your bike tire because it has these burrs on the bottom that are really sharp. And so this is a one too, if you have kids playing in the yard, this is one you actually would want to try to control. They're all taproot, so you can kind of pull them out, or again, a lot of the post-emergence herbicides will work on all 4 of these. So know all of your different weeds so that you know what you're going after as part of a good IPM program.
Excellent. And goat's head is the other word for that one.
Goat's head, yeah. I've never heard it called goat's head, but there's not a lot of this in Wisconsin when I grew up. So it's
Okay, Lauren, a box. And by the way, we are in the presence of greatness. Wow. New department head for plant pathology, who is going to still sit in this chair once in a while, yes?
Absolutely. Gonna pretty much stick with once a month at least if I can. So
perfect.
Planning on that.
Perfect.
So
thanks.
Yeah, looking forward to the change. A lot of good things going on in our Department of Plant Pathology, and it's going to be nice to work with everybody in that capacity. So, but for samples tonight, I brought along kind of something fun that a lot of you have seen. If we can get a close up, I have this box that If you have a dog, you may have thought you saw this in the yard, but it's not. A lot of times we get calls that say, looks like something threw up in the yard. This is a slime mold. It's growing on some mulch. Anytime we have really wet conditions, a lot of times in the spring or just irrigation on mulch beds even can do this. And a few things that are interesting about this. So this is actually an organism that is a whole bunch of different cells that are all moving together. And then this is its fruiting structure. This was kind of the whole preface to come up with the idea of the blob for the movie in 1958, I guess, if you've seen that. So this thing is moving along and engulfing everything it can to feed on as it goes. So not something that's harmful, though. Actually, in some parts of the world, it's eaten. Not that I recommend eating it, but it is said to be one that isn't poisonous. So you don't have to worry about poison. You can just have it out there. Most people just wash it away with a hose. You see slime molds on a lot of different things. And so I thought it might be fun just to taste it and see, because I have never done this, and all my colleagues that I checked with said that we could try this. So I do not recommend this, but we're going to taste it.
We have
you like to
medics
try it too?
standing
No, I think
by.
I'm going to pass.
Okay.
Is it good?
Well, they said it was going to taste like scrambled eggs, and it really doesn't taste like
I
scrambled eggs.
wouldn't have guessed.
I'm not going to recommend that. I'm going to just
You've got
say
water or
wash it
coffee
away.
in front of you.
It did not taste like scrambled eggs. That's a lie if you read that. Slime mold. Don't eat it at home.
Okay, Sarah.
It's not good.
On the other hand, what
Yeah.
Sarah has in
Purslaine's
front of her,
better.
Yeah. So this might be something that someone actually would want to eat.
Right.
So I thought we'd talk about harvesting apples and pears because we're coming into the season for harvest right now in the home orchard. And I think pears are one of the trickier fruits to know when to harvest right. You don't want to let them fully ripen on the tree because they tend to develop a mushy texture and they also develop kind of a brown internal rot, and they don't store very well if you let them fully ripen on the tree. So pears need to be harvested when they're still hard, when they're much too hard to have a good eating texture. But what you want to look at is what we call the ground color or the skin color of the pear. So this pear has a darker green coloration to it. And when they're nearing harvest, the skin color will change like this one, and it will become a lighter green or sometimes almost a yellowish green, but the flesh will still be hard. That is the right texture to pick them. And then if you want to put them in storage, they're stored pretty cold temperatures, 30 to 32 degrees at high humidity, so you can put them in plastic bags to help hold humidity around them. And they'll store for 2 to 4 months if you've got them at those good storage temperatures. Then when you're ready to ripen the pears, bring them out, put them on the counter in the kitchen, let them ripen for a week or so, and they will develop into that good eating texture, and then they're ready to eat, okay? Kind of the same thing on apples. Apples, you also look at the ground color, and this apple has that darker green color. This one is developing the lighter color. If you have a red blushed apple, what you want to do is look at the side of the apple that's on the interior of the tree that's shaded and then judge the ground color from that. Apples will also change from this kind of darker, I think of it as an apple green, to a lighter, almost a whitish green or a yellowish green, and then it's ready for harvest.
Perfect. Thanks, Sarah. And go right ahead and take a bite. You won't need a drink after.
Exactly.
I need a bite of that to get this taste out of my mouth. Yeah.
Okay, Jody, you get the first set of picture questions. The first one comes to us from out in the country on a hilltop southeast of Council Bluffs. It's a great picture. She says her hyacinth bean plants are getting eaten by this. She's never seen it before.
Okay, this is a green stink bug, but it's in one of the nymphal forms. So we call them different instars or stages of development, and they will actually look really pretty and have amazing colors. So sometimes they're red, black, green, stripes, spots. So this is just one of the later instars. So it is a green stink bug. So when it develops into an adult, if you let it live that long, it will just look like a green shield bug, stink bug like normal. If it's a problem, I would pick them off, put them in soapy water. They're pretty visible.
Perfect. Your second one is critters at the base of a grapevine, a lot of critters. Her question is whether they turn into the orange and black bugs that taint the grape juice and the wine.
Okay, so the orange and black bugs I think she's talking about are the multicolored Asian lady beetles, so the type of ladybug that love grapes. These are actually the larval stage of a beetle, but the beetle is called a netwing beetle, and they actually look a lot like moths. They're black and orange, and they feed on nectar, so they don't turn into a pest. And as larvae like this, they're predaceous, I believe, so there's not really anything wrong with these. They're going to turn into beetles.
Perfect. And the third one is actually a very cool looking beetle.
Yeah, and we talked about this one last week, but we didn't have a picture, I think. So this one is called the grapevine beetle. It is a pest of grape foliage, but usually not in amounts where it would need any treatment. But they also can call it like the tan June bug. It's got like 3 spots on each side of their elytra and then on their pronotum. They're pretty cool. Just pick it off or enjoy it.
All right, thanks, Jody. All right, Bill,
Yep.
please identify this weed and tell her what she can do to remove it from her lawn.
That one looks a lot like tall fescue. And so this is just a grass out of place. It happens. We find this all the time on our research plots. This picture really kind of helps to illustrate that. So I even brought a tall fescue plant with me tonight to kind of show, one thing you'd look for is you just want to pull back at the base, and if it's tall fescue, you're not going to see any little claws wrapping around the leaf called auricles. It's just going to be flat. It's round, and you can just definitely tell by the veination. You have these really strong veins running up down the leaf. So unfortunately, this is tall fescue. It's a lawn grass, and so things that we use to kill a lot of our weeds is not going to work on this because this is a lawn grass. So it's going to have to be a non-selective type of a control, or you just cut it out. That's another way. It's a bunch type grass. It's not really going to spread too far. It might have really small little runner rhizomes, but for the most part, cut it out, round it up, reseed with some Kentucky bluegrass, or let the bluegrass just fill in naturally.
All right, thanks, Bill. Let's see, this one, Lauren, comes to us from somewhere, but we don't know where. Tulip tree has many yellow leaves dropping, all of which are covered with brown spots. And it is kind of a concern. What do we think this is? And she does say that she has 2 tulip trees. One did this, the other one is not so much.
Yeah, so you can see on this picture here especially, you can see those dark black blotches on the leaves, and I believe this is tar spot, and I had never seen that before this picture. But tar spot's something that we see a lot of times on maples, and you can see it on other plants, but I really wouldn't recommend trying to control it outside of just using sanitation. It will survive in the leaves, so if you're raking your leaves up good in the fall, doing some cleanup, you should be in pretty good shape. And just to add in, if anyone wants to know what a slime mold tastes like, I'm pretty sure you can go get a handful of mud and lick it. And that's what it tastes like. Don't do it.
And apparently it's getting worse and worse.
It's getting worse. The aftertaste is growing. So
Sarah,
don't do that.
those apples.
Yeah, don't do it. It's like eating worms. It's reminding me of being a kid.
Okay, Sarah, on that note, this is a North Platte viewer. They bought a house with a maple that has obviously dying branches and pretty off color. They've cut a couple off. Other foliage is dying. They want to know what kind of a maple it is and can they do anything to save it?
Well, it looks like this could be some kind of a red maple cultivar, red maple hybrid. It's obviously very chlorotic, and there are a lot of places in Nebraska where the soil pH is just too high for some maples to do well. Either you're going to need to do some injections or some soil treatments to try to improve the iron utilization of this tree, or you're going to lose it because this is getting so severe that you're having branch dieback. So, if you want to do trunk injections, you're probably going to need to hire an arborist to come and do those for you. Otherwise, we do have the Nebraska Forest Service has a great publication on their website that talks about the various treatments that can be used by homeowners to treat iron chlorosis in trees. And so if you go to the Nebraska Forest Service website and look for iron chlorosis in trees, there's a good publication there that can give you some other alternatives.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Well, with vegetable harvest well underway, it's also a great time to start planning and planting for those fall gardens. As our spring planted garden starts to fade, you can easily make room for a variety of vegetables that will mature later this summer and maybe into early fall. Here to tell us more is John Porter.
So the summer might be about half over, but that doesn't mean that it's time to stop gardening. One of the things that a lot of gardeners fail to do is take advantage of the cooler temperatures in fall to grow some wonderful fall vegetable crops. But you can actually get lots of production in your garden by planting in midsummer to early fall to get some of those fall crops in that love the cooler temperatures. So I'm here in my own garden and I'm getting ready to plant some fall crops. Some things that will go from mid-fall all the way to even frost and even a light freeze. So some of the things that we can talk about planting this time of year are the cold crops like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts. Those things do exceptionally well when you plant them midsummer from mid-July to say early August. And sometimes you can luck out and find those in the garden centers. Either they've gotten in the fall crop ready for fall planting, or they may have some holdovers from the spring and summer planting, and as long as they still look healthy, you can plant those in your garden. If you can't find those, one thing that you can do is actually try direct seeding those crops in your garden. Now, it's not 100% effective, and you might have a few losses here and there, but if you can't find those plants, and it's hard for some people to do that, then you can find those seeds or have them saved from spring to plant in your garden. So you can have that broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, and my favorite, Brussels sprouts in the garden. Another thing that you can plant are the leafy greens like kale and Swiss chard. Those things do exceptionally well this time of year, and so you can get those plants in the ground and they'll be ready to go. Some things that you might want to hold off on are things like the lettuces and radishes. Those things actually, well, they will bolt in the hot sun that we still have going on here. So you actually want to wait a little bit longer and plant those whenever the temperatures get cool, maybe later in August, and those will give you some nice fall growth. What you can do is look on the back of the seed packet that you have and look at the date. It'll say days to maturity, and what you want to do is actually count backwards from your first frost date, which wherever you are in Nebraska you'll have to look up, but it's usually from early October, maybe even a little into September, depending on where you are, and count backwards. So if it said, say, maturity 80 days, you will count back 80 days, but you want to add a few days to that for what we call the fall factor, because as the temperatures cool down, the growth starts to slow down. And so adding about 2 weeks to that will account for that fall factor when growth starts to slow. You may also want to add a few weeks there for a harvest window so that you have a little extra growth. So you want to count backwards and make sure that you have enough time to get that crop from the seed or plant all the way to maturity. And you can even sneak in some of those summer crops that are very fast growing, like cucumbers or summer squash, beans, or even tomatoes and peppers that mature very quickly. So take a moment, look at what you have, and get that garden planted this summer for great fall crops.
Getting a fall garden going is pretty easy. You really should have no trouble making room for it as your other plants are being harvested or croak, depending on the bug. It's a great way to extend the season, so get out there, get going. Mostly croak this year based on the number of questions Jody's getting. All right, so you have another set of pictures from 2 or 3 people, and this is what in the world has happened to befouling and eating the coneflowers, purple coneflowers. It's not Japanese beetle. What is this, Jody?
No, so this is the sunflower head moth or the sunflower moth, or sometimes they just call it the head moth. But after I looked at those pictures, I went out to look at my own coneflowers, and I have sunflower cone moths. So I actually just cut the heads off some of my coneflowers so you can see what the damage is. So these are caterpillars, and when they're very small, they've got longitudinal stripes and they have this head capsule. And I actually saw a couple last night on the seed head. And what they do is they like tunnel in and they'll feed in there, and they'll leave this disgusting mass of frass, which is poop, and also like matted webbing. And so it just looks terrible. Treatment is not really gonna work in a home garden because these are huge pollinator plants, and we would have to treat the flower head, and that would be not good for pollinators. But It is the most economical pest of like commercial sunflowers, so they have a way of scouting and trapping and finding out if they've got to treat aerial. So in-home gardens, just keep an eye on that. Look for those small caterpillars, try to pick them off. I did that with a headlamp and tweezers last night. And then cut off the heads that don't look very good.
All right, and we were talking off air that maybe this is cyclical because we didn't see it last year very much.
Right,
We
my
don't know for
coneflowers
sure.
looked perfect last year, but they and the moths we think migrate, so they'll come in from outside, and they are not pretty. They look like little tiny cigar-shaped moths, so they're all rolled up. So it's not, it's definitely not a caterpillar you want around.
All right, thanks, Jody. Okay, so this is a Northeast Lincoln viewer, Bill. Tall fescue lawn, areas of creeping red fescue that turn brown in the hot summer. This fall, when they aerate and overseed with tall fescue or bluegrass, can it outcompete the creeping red? So here's pictures of death.
Yes, this is death. That is fine fescue. This happens a lot in Nebraska. Fine fescues just do not like it here. They don't like heavy soils. In eastern Nebraska, we have a lot of heavier soils. We get rainfall, we get heat and humidity, the fine fescues die. Maybe in western part of the state, in the sandhills, sandier soil, cooler nights, the fine fescues might work a lot better. They get a bunch of different diseases. Every single year we have our lawn display plots at East Campus, and the fine fescues die like every other year. Just dead, a perfect square of dead grass. So I would not put any more fine fescue in there. The nice thing is, the tall fescue and the bluegrass really like Nebraska weather. So if we seed into it this fall, like you said you want to do, and we just fertilize it, manage it the way we'd manage those grasses, the fine fescue will slowly fade away. And if it's shade, remember, tall fescue is actually more shade tolerant than fine fescue, despite what those bags say at the garden center. So if you got shade, do tall fescue.
Gotcha, Bill. And they don't have to kill the turf to plant it.
No, it's dead already. I mean, it's a bunch type grass. It's not coming back. So.
Okay, all right, Lauren, this comes to us from Torrington, Wyoming. So one of our good, almost into Nebraska viewers. They have the Colorado 4 o'clock, which is the native and perennial. 8 to 10 of them, and apparently they are starting to have issues with them. They'll look beautiful, same problem that is present. They see this leaf stuff going on. They cut the plants back, they regenerate next year. They really haven't seen much for insects, although Jody saw one. And the pictures of the foliage, what do you think this is here?
Well, as we're looking at the leaves, you can see kind of that window painting or clearing in individual spots. So if this isn't an insect, then I would encourage them to take a close look and maybe I don't know, Jody, even maybe shake some leaves on paper or something to see if they see anything coming off that could possibly do any feeding like that. But some of the there's a bacterial leaf spot that can affect 4 o'clocks. And our bacterial diseases a lot of times will result in that leaf clearing and kind of paper and shot hole appearance that you see. So that's what I expect on this could be the case. So it would definitely be one, though, that if they want to know for sure, I'd recommend maybe having a sample go to, if they're in Wyoming, maybe a local extension office or something to see if they can get a closer idea of it. But bacterial leaf spot is what I'm guessing.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Okay, Sarah, you have a couple of images of some trees. The first from Underwood, Iowa, and you're getting these even though they sound like they go to Lauren because they start out with, he knows this is a southwest, probably frost crack, and then of course a conch. In the crack, wonders what he can do about it. This is a linden. And then the second one is a flowering crabapple that was damaged by a warm snap during the winter. Same thing, notice the white growth below the cracks. So the questions really here are, what do they do about this at this point with these trees? Do they cut them down? And more importantly, the second one here from York is wondering, will this affect other trees?
No, these are the fruiting structures of wood rot fungi, and they won't directly infect other trees. The fungal spores for these types of organisms are present in the environment all the time. But if you have dead wood or a wound in a tree, like we obviously see on this tree, and this tree has a pretty substantial wound, I imagine this tree will be dead very shortly. So my recommendation would be yes to take this tree down. But unless another tree has interior dead wood or a wound, then you don't have to worry about these wood rot fungi. They only come in on wounded or low vigor declining trees. And there's no treatment. There's no fungicide that you can spray that will stop the wood rot fungi. Removing the conchs, the mushroom structures themselves won't stop the wood rot fungi. It's going to still continue to be active inside that tree. So there's nothing you can do directly for this. But that second tree I would definitely take down. The first one actually, it looked like the tree was sealing over the crack. And so I think there's a really good possibility that that tree could go on and be healthy for a long, long time. So even though that interior wood is rotting, that doesn't mean the tree is dying. So that first tree, the linden, I would let that stay. I think that's going to be a good tree still.
Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. All righty. Well, you know, we're often impressed with the big showy flowers that put on that wonderful, colorful show, but sometimes it's hard to find these border plants with itsy bitsy flowers. So we're going to hear about one of those in this week's Backyard Farmer Garden Minute.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're going to continue looking at our 2018 All-America Selection choices. We're going to look at Kufia. It is this kind of nice blended pink color, stays very short, looks great in the containers that we have it in this year. If you put Kufia or Mexican heather along the side of a bed, especially along concrete, it'll laugh at the heat. Does very good. Is actually a nice little pollinator plant. We'll get some butterflies to it. Laughs at drought, laughs at heat, doesn't bother the wind because it's so low. It only gets to be, about 6 to 10 inches tall. So it'd be a really good kind of front end edger for any of your landscape beds. So try to find Mexican heather or Kufia Flora Glory Diana in your landscape, or check it out at Backyard Farmer Garden.
These kinds of dinky little but beautiful flowers are perfect for borders and filling in those spaces. They're in their full glory out in our Backyard Farmer Garden right now, as are all those beautiful pollinating insects and butterflies. We have butterflies. All right, Jody, so this is a Clay City question. Apparently chiggers and bees are doing their work. They want to know, is there a safe way to control the chiggers without harming the bees? Besides staying in the house.
Well, okay. So I'm dealing with chiggers right now, so I feel your pain. I do. I don't think there's an easy way to do it when it comes to chemicals. I think mostly it has to do with preventing by like our protective gear, so we want to wear long pants and socks, and you can wear permethrin treated clothing. And what I do when I'm outside is that when I come back in, I will take like a washcloth or a wet wipe or something and wipe my skin down, especially on my legs if I'm wearing shorts, because the chiggers are pretty much a type of itch mite that will attach to your body. And so you want to dislodge that, and you want to shower, as soon as you get in from doing yard work. So
that's about it,
that's
isn't it?
probably the best way to do it, because you definitely want to go out and enjoy outside and do your yard work, but you also don't want to kill any bees. I mean, bifenthrin has been shown, but then that's spraying pesticides.
Yeah, so don't do it.
Yeah.
I've never had chiggers.
You are so lucky.
Oh, you are so lucky.
Is it correct, Jody, that
It's
wearing
terrible.
the same clothes, like someone that comes
Yeah,
home for an
so-
hour
yeah.
and then the next day again, that can
Right.
make it worse too, right?
So yeah,
making
they will
sure
stay
washing-
on your clothing. So I just take everything and put it right into the washing machine.
How did I proclaim this on
It's
TV?
terrible.
I'm doomed to get
It's terrible.
Exactly. Tonight you're going to go home, walk that big dog, that big monster dog, and come home with chigger bites.
Like if you've ever wanted to live in a nudist colony and not wear clothes, get chiggers, because it is in all the worst places.
Pretty much.
Like,
And on that note,
On that note,
so this is from Hornick, Iowa,
Okay.
Northwest Viewer. She wants to know, is it good for the lawn to use milorganite as the fertilizer, spring, summer, fall, and early winter? And if not, why not?
you could. I like milorganite or other organic products. The one thing about them is they're going to release in the middle of the summer, though. So You don't want to use it when in the early spring or in the late parts of the year. We don't like late fall fertilizer anyways, but I still wouldn't even use much in September or October because it's just going to sit there and then it's going to release in the middle of July next year and then you're going to be growing. So if you have like a really lean soil, like a subdivision with no topsoil, I put some Orgonite in my program just to build some of the fertility, but you might want some more quick release or controlled release fertilizers in those times of the year where it's a little bit cooler.
All right, thanks, Bill. Okay, Lauren, this is San Marzano tomatoes, and they have great growth until they start to set the fruit. The fruit rots on the vine. It's an organic garden. Any notion on what might be going on with the fruit rotting on the vine? They're not talking about blossom end rot either. They're talking about collapse.
Well, some of the things that we see, if it, for one is to make sure you're mulching the soil so you're not getting splash up onto the fruit, because there are some fungal infections that many times will result in fruit rots like that. Things that come to mind that can do that would be if you have black blotches, an anthracnose fruit rot is one that can be pretty common. But without knowing for sure what it is, there's a lot of things that could do fruit rots. Just try to make sure you're avoiding overhead irrigation, make sure you have mulch, and remove any of those infested fruits to reduce that inoculum for any spread if it is a disease for sure.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Sarah, we have a couple of viewers who apparently have bought small young trees, and they're real trees, they're oaks and those sorts of big guys when they grow up, but they're double leaders when they're little. Should they go ahead and prune one of those leaders out now, or wait till fall, or let it be for a little while? What would you recommend on that?
Well, yeah, you don't want to have a forked trunk like that. You want to develop a central leader because that's the strongest structure for the tree. But you don't have to completely remove one altogether. So what you could do would be to take the height off of one side, whichever side you want to remove eventually, take it about halfway down so that the one that you want to be the central leader will be at least 12 to 18 inches taller than the second one. So what that's going to do is it's going to force the plant growth hormones then to go to that taller shoot, and that will eventually become the main leader of the tree. Then over time you can gradually take more and more off of that secondary branch and eventually remove it altogether and allow the tree to develop a nice good canopy. So when do you do the pruning? Ideally, I would say during the dormant period from about November to the end of March would be the best time to make those cuts.
Who's going to win tonight?
I hope Lauren does 2 again.
2.
Quality, not quantity.
Okay,
Power
Sarah.
of slime mold tonight.
This is a Wahoo question. So in your neighborhood, are blueberries hard to grow in Nebraska?
Yes, very hard. They don't like our soil pH. Grow service berries instead.
Perfect. This is an Omaha viewer who says the Rose of Sharon flower buds fell off. Any idea why that would have happened?
The first thing that comes to mind would be watering. Just make sure that they're not too dry, too drought stressed. That could cause flower abortion. Okay.
This is a North Platte viewer who says they have dodder. Is that something that is good or bad, and should it be removed?
Yeah, dodder can get worse over the course of time. You can get more and more of it. It can kind of shade out or choke out a plant. So yes, I would definitely get rid of it, hoe it, or use a pre-emergent.
All right. A Murray viewer wonders whether a walnut tree 50 feet away from 2 15-year-old pin oaks could cause them to croak.
I would more expect yellowing of the foliage. I wouldn't expect outright death. So I'd say probably not direct cause.
All right. Will bleach that drifts onto plants from overhead spray kill them?
No, it could cause leaf burning like a spot or a contact herbicide like Diquat, but it probably wouldn't kill it unless they got completely drenched.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Nice job. Okay, what are we ready like, department head?
Ready like an overripe slime mold. Don't do that.
Okay, this is yet again a question about pear
Overmature,
rust.
I should say.
Pear rust. From Carney, what do they spray next year to control the rust on those ornamental pears?
Biggest thing is going to be to do that timing at the right time and make sure you're doing that earlier in the year. Ornamental pears, I believe in that situation you could probably use like a propiconazole product.
All right. Is there any way to avoid bacterial wilt in cucumbers next year if it was terrible this year? And this is from Seward.
Don't grow cucumbers.
And if they want to?
I'm trying to win. Okay, well, you can go through sanitation methods. That would be the biggest thing, to remove that, remove the residue, try to do that. would be the biggest thing.
All right. This is a Newell, Iowa question, which is, can scab actually appear on the fruit of apples?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that it can distort the growth, and fruit would be docked if in a commercial orchard if it had scab.
All right. This is a Denton viewer who says, have you ever seen mold on the roots of bindweed? And they're hopeful on this one.
No.
All right. Nice job. Pretty nice job.
Gosh, I was trying.
You've at least remembered that you were in a lightning round this time.
Didn't go in the life cycle.
Yep.
Okay, are you ready, Bill?
I am ready, Kim.
Okay. This is a Grand Island viewer who wonders whether ascochyta could cause the grass to be white and the soil to be like concrete.
No, the ascochyta wouldn't. It's probably drought if it soils like concrete.
Okay. A viewer wants to know what to use to suppress crabgrass and watergrass right now.
Yeah, crabgrass is everywhere right now. We're seeing a lot of breakdown of the pre-emergence herbicides, and the post-emergence aren't working great. Maybe a claim might work. Be careful if it's hot; it could cause damage.
Okay, we're getting the when do I treat nimblewill and with what questions?
We're still a little early on nimblewill. It's still kind of ideal temperatures, even though it's a little cooler now this last week, but it's going to be warm again, I'm sure, in August. So let's wait a little bit longer on the nimblewill with tenacity.
Okay, a Gothenburg viewer wants to know how to control quackgrass in fescue and Kentucky bluegrass.
Roundup. That's all you got.
All right.
Can't pull it.
So this person has stored weed killer and granular fertilizer in a detached, uninsulated garage. Never freezes, but does that damage the effectiveness?
Yeah, it can. Liquid fertilizers really can, especially if they have iron in them. But the pesticides too, if they sit there open, things can happen. So if things are really old, there's going to be information on the label about storage temperatures and maybe even shelf life. So look at your label to make sure that you're using product that's going to be effective.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. Okay, you ready, Jody? Mm-hmm. All right. This is a Gretna viewer who says neem oil did not work on Japanese beetles. Wants something that is effective on edibles.
I don't have anything to recommend for edibles.
All right. So another Japanese beetle question is, how long do they feed before they either leave or die?
Okay, so they'll probably leave in October. Die, it depends if you've treated with anything or if they've been eating something that has been treated.
All right. A Lincoln viewer forgot to put down their grub control. Are we well out of the window?
I believe Bill would say yes.
How do you get rid of the orange aphids on milkweeds without harming the butterflies or the caterpillars?
Oh, a really hard spray of water, they can get knocked off pretty easily and they won't be able to get back on.
Okay, what would you recommend using on spider mites that have appeared all over hydrangeas and butterfly bushes?
Horticulture oil, maybe a summer oil, or soap and water.
Okay, do all wasps have a waist?
Yes, some are thinner than others.
Just like human beings.
Yes.
All right, nice job. I couldn't even see who won on that one.
Jody did.
Jody won
Jody
last
won.
minute, last
Jody.
5
The
seconds.
very last 5 seconds.
You read
So,
faster for her, I know it.
Yeah.
We'll go back and
before we
listen and
Yeah,
we'll see.
exactly.
Totally rigged.
Rigged system.
Well, you can win next time. So there you go.
So I answers 2.
Okay, Sarah, what do we have for plants of the week?
Well, this is a fun combination because both of these plants are native in North America. They're both great for butterflies and pollinators. They're both pretty tolerant to deer. So if you have trouble with deer in a landscape, both of these plants are pretty resistant to that. So this little yellow one we have in the front is a Rudbeckia. This is a native Rudbeckia called tall coneflower. Golden Glow is the cultivar name on this one. Beautiful little, not little, I shouldn't say. This one can get in the 4 to 6 foot height range in the landscape, but it's a beautiful, colorful perennial to put out there. Easy to grow, full to partial sun, and it will do really well. The one in the back, this is Joe Pie weed. The Eupatorium is the botanical name for that. And again, it does very well, full sun to partial shade. This one likes really moist soil. And so if you had a rain garden or if you had a place where like you were next to a stream or a creek, or if it was in a drainage way on your property, Joe Pye weed would do really well there. But the tall coneflower will also do very wet sites. So both of them have lots of good multiple applications in the landscape. But again, great for pollinators, and both are native. So if you're trying to create that native landscape, these would both be great choices.
Perfect. And if you want to see that combination in its full height and glory, they're in the Backyard Farmer Garden. So it's a little hard to bring in a 6-foot flower stem.
Yeah.
Have the cameras be able to see it.
Right.
All right, Jody, picture questions are yours next. And you have a couple of, what are these caterpillar beasties? The first is from McCook. Couldn't figure out what this caterpillar is, but also found tiny white things near his head and figures those are some type of a parasite. What do we have here?
Yeah, so the viewer is correct about the parasite. This is a banded sphinx moth caterpillar. So a lot of the sphinx moths are pretty heavy-bodied like that. The reason why this one's really hard to identify, though, is because the banded sphinx moth can take many different varieties and forms. So they're usually like black or red, footed and green. So this one's very different. In terms of the parasitoid, so it's a wasp that actually lays its eggs, and a parasitoid is a parasite that actually kills the host over time. I think it's pretty awesome that you want to save it, but I think it's too late for that. So you have to let nature take its course.
All right, nature can be a little bit brutal.
Yeah, and they turn into those big, hardy-bodied moths that are daytime flying. They're pretty cool.
Perfect. And so the second one here is this is from Omaha, little caterpillar eating the dill. What is this little inchworm looking thing?
Okay, so anything that looks like that, yeah, we call them inchworms or geometrids. They walk, or loopers, because they walk in that certain way. These turn into moths that are really not that great, but this one's a cabbage looper, and we see a lot of these in the Backyard Farmer Garden, any vegetable garden. So it's usually pretty pesty.
So
but,
flick.
Yeah, just take it off.
Flicking going.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, Bill, we have a new lawn issue with a lot of questions here. He is wondering what in the world he can do to make this lawn healthier, get rid of everything that's growing in here that he does not want.
Yep, this actually is not that bad. I see rows of your desirable grass there. It's just a spring seeding. This is what happens. This is why we talk about using those starter fertilizers with mesotrione in them, because they can help to prevent these annual grasses from coming in. There's seed there though. It looks a little stunted. Maybe it's a little low on fertilizer. To use a starter fertilizer with a high middle number, high phosphorus if you haven't. That would be something I would consider applying. Maybe let's wait until we get a little later in August, and then we'll try to fertilize a little more aggressively and just start mowing those summer annuals down so that the desirables are not being shaded out, and you should have a good looking lawn this fall.
All right, excellent. Yep. Thanks, Bill. Okay, Lauren, you get a couple of pictures that also, sort of like Sarah's, suggest, does this go to rots? Does this go to insects? So the first is a limelight hydrangea. Started with some rust-looking leaves, got rustier and rustier. She did not see any insect damage, so she actually brought it up to path and then discovered it was what? Not a rust.
No.
But do we see rust on hydrangea? Have you seen any of those sorts of diseases on hydrangeas?
I haven't seen rust on hydrangea. I've seen powdery mildew on hydrangea, and I've seen spider mites on hydrangea. So was this one spider mites as they brought it up? Okay,
yeah.
So that's what I would guess. A lot of times you get those lower leaves coming in, and spider mites are really bad this year.
Right, and she had actually treated a couple of times with a fungicide before it was determined in the path lab or in the diagnostic clinic that it was spider mites.
Yeah. Always good to get the right ID, because it's a good example of something that you might think is a disease. It's hard to see. You don't see large insects there, and you got the small ones there, but fungicides will not do anything with that. In fact, they may make it worse, because you would be controlling fungi that could actually affect the mites.
Perfect. And the second one is also a hydrangea. This is the southeast side of Lincoln. Yellowing leaves and actually getting a little worse. They're getting 6 hours of sun, east edge of a patio. They're watered with the landscape. She's wondering what can be done. Is this disease-based or is this nutrition, environmental? Any idea on this one?
In this particular case, I would just kind of watch this plant carefully, make sure it's not being overwatered. It could have, when you get those lower leaves browning and having that effect and some yellowing, new growth even, you can have some sort of a root and crown rot. If it's an older plant especially, that can be the case. If it's a newer plant, though, I would just kind of watch it. It looks like it's a newer establishment. And just kind of see what happens. There's nothing I'd really recommend to do until you kind of watch it play out for a little bit. It might just be establishing itself.
All right, thank you, Lauren. All right, Sarah, this is an Omaha viewer who planted a row of privet 4 or 5 years ago. Did well. They'd grow to about 6 feet and then they'd die coming into spring, but they'd come back up a little bit, replanted, same thing happening again, pruned back hard. They don't have much, so they've got a couple that have half the plant is dead. It's a new situation, rebuilt wall, new topsoil, fertilized, watered to give them the moisture. Any hope for continuing to not have death in these things?
No, they're going to have this problem is going to be ongoing. This is golden vickery privet, which is not particularly winter hardy. We see a lot of winter damage on this in Nebraska. Not like the standard just green privet, which is very, very hardy and grows so well. So you're probably going to continue to see this. So either you need to just tolerate that and just cut out the dead every spring as it dies back. Although there is a couple of cultivars that are the same green or the yellowish green coloration that the golden vickery have that are supposed to be more winter hardy. One is called Hillside and the other one is called Storzinger Strain. Those are both recommended by Michael Durr. So you could look to see if you could find those, if you might replace what you have, with those two cultivars. Otherwise, this is going to be an ongoing problem.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Well, oaks were pretty much made for the climate here in Nebraska and just about everywhere else in the country and maybe even the world. So we have been getting quite a few questions about some of the insect pests that have shown up in our oak trees. Here to help us identify what is going on and how to keep those mighty trees healthy is Jonathan Larson.
We're looking at an English columnar oak here, one of our really awesome oak species that we can grow here in Nebraska. It's on display here at the OPPD Arboretum. We love oaks. They're a long-lived tree species. They tend to last a long time and they're very beautiful. It's probably my favorite kind of tree to see out in the landscape. Because of their longevity and all of the different niches that a tree can offer, from the leaves to the stems to the trunk, even down into the root zone, oaks can attract a lot of insects. We don't think of them as very pesty trees. They don't often have a lot of really serious pests, but you can see lots of things living on them and developing on them. One example would be galls. We have lots of different galls that can feed on an oak tree. Oaks themselves have about 750 different species of galls that can live on them. We have jumping oak galls, we have bullet oak galls, apple oak galls. These are insects and mites that create a saliva or a sting that makes the plant develop a house around them, sort of a tumor that they live in and feed in. They typically aren't going to harm the tree. We would just call these cosmetic issues, so we don't need to treat for galls. There are other insects that you can see though. Here is some oak leaf lace bugs. Lace bugs feed on the leaf surface. They suck sap out of the tree with their needle-like mouth parts. They can leave behind oil-like feces, which can look like somebody kind of sprayed motor oil on your tree. Again, not something we usually need to treat for, but if you did a systemic product in the spring, you wouldn't see very many of these on the tree. One issue that we're seeing more and more of though is this oak skeletonizer, where it's a caterpillar that gets onto the oak leaf and kind of chafes off part of the leaf material, leaves behind just a papery thin area with lots of veins inside of it. Again, not something that we typically need to treat for, but if you were to do a systemic treatment, also would probably control that pest. Last one I'll mention is called a twig girdler or a twig pruner. These are beetles that they lay their eggs inside of the stem of the branch. And so when they do that, they either cut a notch around the branch or they just put their egg in there and the larva does the notching. You'll see leaves and twigs that fall down out of the tree. If you just sweep those up and burn them, you'll kill the larva and you'll see fewer of those the next year. But keep planting oaks. We love these trees. We want to see them succeed, but we don't usually have to do a whole lot for any of these pests that we've talked about here today.
You know, as Jonathan said, oaks are for the most part going to thrive in Nebraska. Occasionally we're going to see this type of damage. Knowing what to look for is the first step in controlling or let it be, and putting those oaks in the right spot, especially we had the question that was kind of chlorosis related. All right, Jody, last picture here. This is Clay County, South Dakota. Her first question was very curious, very interesting. She has clippers in there for scale. She didn't give us any more information in the first. So the follow-up question was, has a beastie emerged? She said no, but then she told us this is on the trunk of the tree. So is this you or is this Lauren?
I'd like to say this is probably Lauren, but a lot of
yeah, we don't know.
Yeah,
so again,
we don't
this is
really
kind of
know.
one of the
If I thought it was an egg mass, I'm an entomologist, so I would rear it out to see what actually comes out of it. But since it's on the trunk of the tree, it doesn't seem like a concealed place that a bug would want to lay eggs. So
it's not a fruiting structure that I quickly identify anyway, from what I can see from the size of it. So that's kind of a hard one.
So maybe
not sure.
We'll just maybe
Close-up
see.
picture, large it.
Exactly. All right, so we have a weed behind the shed in a mulch bed, but we've seen this all over yards. Bill, what is this weed? And
Yep, this is wild strawberry. This is something that is you can control with several different types of herbicides. In a mulch bed, can you pull it? Can you pull it?
You can, but it's just like a strawberry. You pull one and the runners keep running.
Apparently, a bunch of the products, though, are effective at it, so if you're having a hard time controlling it. And things that have triclopyr, because it's kind of woody, are going to be a little bit more effective. And it's good perennial, so those perennials we spray in the fall, and hopefully we'll get some control there.
All right, and no, don't eat it. It's not very good.
It doesn't taste good.
Yeah, I've never tried it. But.
No eating. All right, so this is pole bean leaves that are curling, Lauren. This is different than the previous curled or wrinkled leaf thing. She says quite a few of the leaves on her pole beans have this issue.
So that looks a lot like a virus. So if they have other plants in the garden and they're seeing curled leaves, then we start talking about herbicide drift injury with a growth regulator. If it is a virus, you will probably see individual plants that are affected. At this point, it's not going to make it where you can't eat the fruit. So I would just go ahead and harvest what you can with it and let it go. You can't really treat anything to get the virus infection affected. So just let it go. If you wanted to rogue it out, if it's just a couple, you could do that.
All right, Sarah, we have a couple of hibiscus questions. So seeing the distorting in the buds, those kinds of things, what do we think this is going on these?
Well, so my first thought looking at this picture was that it was some kind of herbicide damage, but I think the homeowner is pretty emphatic that there wasn't any herbicide used in the area. I did a little bit of research and found there is a condition called strapping in hibiscus, but it's only in soils that are very low pH, so 5.5 to 5 is the only place where it would occur, and it's caused by a molybdenum deficiency, which is in short supply in those low acidic soils. So I guess what I would do is do a soil test and find out what the pH of your soil is. If your pH is 6 or above, then this is not the molybdenum deficiency, and I would think something else. Again, I would go back to herbicide injury potentially.
All right, okay. So hopefully,
right.
We can't really give her much more, and the other one here is kind of an oddball situation.
Yeah, this other one makes me think there might be something going on with the roots of this plant, and I think that change in color is possibly some kind of a stress symptom that we're seeing. So I would make sure that it's well watered. Possibly in the fall you could dig it up, you could see if it's just got circling roots and replant it, make sure it's planted well, those roots are spread out, and maybe it would recover.